Hello, and welcome to Tavern Chat, the daily cast about gaming. And yes, OSR, Pathfinder, D&D. It's mostly OSR stuff, but I would not call this a Dungeons and Dragons cast. Although, of course, today it's going to be about D&D. But why are we talking about D&D today? Why are we talking about Dungeons and Dragons? Well, it is the elephant in the room, right? It is the engine that drives, I don't know, all the business really when it comes to gaming. If you're an OSR publisher, they are the tide that lifts all ships, right? They're bringing new players into gaming. The OSR is not bringing in new players to gaming. Pathfinder is not bringing new players into gaming. I'm an OSR gamer. Okay, what's bringing new players in is going to be fifth edition D&D. Now they might come into gaming, tabletop gaming, and go, "Oh, yeah, I like this, but maybe I want something more simple," and they'll go to OSR or an OSR style rule set like Swords and Wizardry or Labyrinth Lord. Maybe they'll go, "I want more crunch," and they'll go to Pathfinder or Pathfinder 2e. But how long is fifth edition going to be viable? Now, if you look at the screen right now, I have all the dates from the Wikipedia for the different editions of D&D and AD&D, and I'm gonna pick out some dates. I'm gonna tell you what I think is relevant to the discussion I'm going to be having today. 1974. That's the original wood grained or white box set. Okay. 1977, AD&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, started coming out. So, and Basic Set version 1 was intended to be an introduction to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. That basic advanced thing was actually supposed to be one system. But we'll say, all right, so 74 to 77, it was 3 years, but they still kept them published in the original box set. All right. So AD&D was the system until AD&D second edition came out. Second edition came out in 1989, 12 years later. Okay. So what's the next big mark? Third edition came out in 2000. All right. So we went from a 12-year stretch now to 11-year stretch. But third edition quickly got rebooted with the 3.5 3 years later. And 2008, we got fourth edition. So that was a 7-year stretch. Interesting, right? Why so quick? Well, part of the problem with third edition or 3X, if you count 3.5 and third edition at the same edition, is the open game license, which kind of took the control of locking down that system out of the hands of Wizards of the Coast. So they wanted something they could lock down and control. Enter fourth edition D&D. Like I said, 8 years after third edition, 5 years after 3.5. Fourth edition. And the game system and license, or whatever the hell it was, the GSL, not really endorsed by many companies. I know Goodman Games tried to do a little bit with it, but not much else happened. So 6 years after that, we got fifth edition. That's 2014. We are now in 2011. That's 7 years. If you look at how quickly they've been doing this over the last couple of generations of the game, we're due a new edition of D&D. And you can damn well be sure that in the hallowed halls of Wizards of the Coast, they are working on it. Now, do I think it's going to be called 6th edition? I don't think so. My guess is it can go one of two ways, but either way, I suspect it's going to be more of a stealth change. One way is that we're just going to get the current rules updated with the new, no more negative attributes for the prior evil races or cultures or whatever we're calling them now, that will be edited into the core books. Things like alignment for Drow or orcs. You're going to see that humanoid races in the Munster Manual and other sources are going to be updated to reflect that they are no longer assumed to be evil. That is what I suspect we're going to see in the next printing edition update to the rules. Here's the reason why I don't think they want to call it 6th edition, because they control so much of the market and they're making money off it. You don't want to upset the apple cart, but you do want to put a new version of the rules in print, because that is a huge way to make money. Why did Paizo come out with Pathfinder 2nd edition? And people are going to go, oh, because the rules got overweighted and they had to come. If all they were doing was trying to control or reclaim the rules, they didn't have to go and make changes so far where Pathfinder 2 is not really compatible with Pathfinder 1 material. But they wanted to ensure that they were going to sell new rule books. Here's the thing. 5e has enough of a player base and enough of people with disposable income, I'll get to that in a second, that I think that updating to new art, new layout, and making these stealth, maybe even rewriting it, but you're not going to change the actual rules. The mechanics are not going to change. That is what I think is most likely. They're not going to call it 6th edition. It'll just be Dungeons and Dragons, latest printing, or whatever, however they're going to sell it to you. Now, what it could be is it could also come out with the recognition of, all right, well, Pathfinder is there to appeal to the players that want more crunch. And maybe we should put out a version of D&D that has less crunch. So they'll put out a version of D&D that dials the crunch back, dials back some of those options, but still is compatible, 100% compatible, not 95%, 100% compatible with what you currently have. And there's a reason for that. Because Paizo players, Pathfinder players, were understandably upset when Pathfinder First Edition was abandoned. And I know I'm going to have some negative feedback on this. Oh, no, Pathfinder 2 is great. Listen, if you're enjoying Pathfinder 2, more power to you. But just like when Wizards of the Coast went from 3.5 to 4.0, and that spurred the huge embracing of Pathfinder 1e when people wanted an alternative to a D&D that nobody really wanted. I think that if Wizards of the Coast is going to want to make an alternative to Pathfinder and Pathfinder 2 and try to get a new market, they'll try to slim down, make 5th edition even easier to get into. Doesn't even have to be a new edition. Really, they could keep out what's out there and have a D&D light type of version that is 100% compatible with it. Without, it's almost what Paizo has done with their Pathfinder box for the beginner box, which I think is a better way than the basic or starter boxes for 5th edition, which I do own and I have read. I think Paizo did a much better job with their 2 beginner boxes. I wish that Paizo would come along and follow their beginner box with an expert box, or whatever they want to call it, and make it a real way to ramp people into Pathfinder. I think that when it comes to D&D, you could do something modular with the rules maybe going forward, and maybe put out box sets, because box sets get the collectible market, right? People always want to collect the box set, and you get thematic box sets. But you could go from the basic or essentials and move up from there. You could, again, advanced. You could bring people up to the full 5e rules in a modular fashion. Again, do I have any inside knowledge? No. But I would certainly put a monthly pension check down on, I am quite sure Wizards of the Coast is working on the next iteration or generation of Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe not. Again, I don't think it's going to be a new edition. I don't think it's going to be an edition that makes your current releases incompatible. I think it's going to be one that just makes a system easier to get involved with, to enter into the hobby with. So, going back to the wiki page, in 2020, Wizards of the Coast announced that Dungeons & Dragons had a 6th annual year of growth in 2019, with a 300% increase in sales of their introductory box sets, as well as a 65% increase in sales in Europe, a rate which has been quadruple since 2014. In terms of player demographics in 2019, I want to note, this is before COVID, 39% of identified players identified as female. 61% identified as male. That is a huge swing from when I came into gaming around 1979, 1980. And it's even a huge swing probably from the last 10 years. There is an attraction to a set of rules that is easily accessible when it comes to getting past gatekeepers. And there's gatekeeping in the OSR, there's gatekeeping in D&D, gatekeeping with the Pathfinder system. There's a complexity that you have to be able to say, hey, if you can't deal with this, then people tell you to go pound sand. D&D is finding that sweet spot with 5th edition. Age groups. 40% of players are considered Generation Z, 24 years old or younger. 34% are 25 to 34. 26% are age 35 plus. That 35 plus demographic is not what they're aiming for. They'll gladly take it, but they're not aiming for it. That's, by the way, it's January 2021. So they've got to find a way to bring in new players without alienating their current players. And again, I fully suspect we are going to get a stealth edition change, whether that is a re-releasing of the rules in a slightly pared down version with some less options going in and you expand on it later. Certainly we're going to see the core books, assuming they stay in print, the core books are going to get updated with all the new errata, the update that's being, if you're playing with, what do you call it? What is it, D&D Beyond? If you're playing with the D&D Beyond, you've already got those updates in your online versions of the rulebook. So I just see it happening in later print versions. But again, I can certainly see them wanting to make sure that when they update, and again, the update's going to be a cash grab. Don't get me wrong. It's always a cash grab to some extent when you update the rules, because you want players to buy new core books again. And that's where money comes in. And if you can do that while still keeping your back catalog valid, so much the better. I'd like to hear what you think. And if you're an angry Pathfinder player, well, I've already probably heard what you think. But what do the 5e players think? Do you see that we have a new edition on the horizon? Or again, I don't think it's going to change the rules per se. It's certainly going to change the presentation, and it might lower the barrier to entry. I could certainly see that. But what do you expect out of the new iteration of the D&D rules when we do get them? Let me know on the voicemail, 347-509-5168. Or if you're on Anchor, leave me an Anchor voicemail. I'd love to hear it. Folks, as always, we are in the midst of the world of the pandemic. So please, use your common sense. I am immunized. That was a decision I made for myself and for my family. But you know your health, you know your risk factors, you know what's right for you. Just use your common sense. All right? Be safe, be well. God bless. Roll those dice. Knock on wood. I'll be back again tomorrow in a couple of days. Rich and I are heading out to North Texas. Woohoo! A couple of days of con. All right, folks. On that note, I'm out of here. Later.